Welcome to the Building Doors Podcast, where we're not just pushing for opportunities for women's voices to be heard, we're creating them. I'm Christy Harst, voiceover actor and creator of the Building Doors campaign. Join us as we amplify voices, break barriers, and build doors together. Welcome to the Building Doors Podcast. I am your host, Christy Harst, and today on Building Doors, I am so happy and excited to welcome and introduce to all of you my friend, Lori Zoss. She is an entrepreneur, author, and founder of Growth Owl, like hoo-hoo owl. Lori and I go way back. We went to college together and served on our college radio station board side by side. The days. Since then, she has built a career helping mission-driven organizations grow. She helps them secure corporate partnerships. I said it right, and I read for a living. And mentoring others along the way, like myself. She's also an accomplished author. She wrote a book called The Boardroom Playbook, which guides nonprofits and associations to create lasting impact. And she just recently released her debut novel called Under Caution, showcasing her creativity and storytelling. Lori, I am so excited to have you here. Thank you very much and welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here with you. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
You know, one of the reasons that I immediately thought of you when it came time to make a list of potential podcast guests is because of how you and I kind of reconnected after college and the things that I started to learn from you and the things that I started to look at differently after speaking to you. And so let's talk first. Let's lay the foundation. Growth Owl, excuse me. Talk to me about Growth Owl, why you saw the need for it. And just break it down, like, what is it?
Yeah, sure. So I started Growth Owl LLC back in 2018. And it was after a long career in both public media and other forms of media where I was very successful in both reaching out to corporate sponsors, potential corporate partners, as well as leading teams to do that. And specifically, when I was in public media, I worked with PBS and NPR, and I actually had a team of people where we would go out and speak with various organizations, Fortune 1000 companies, to help find funding for the stations. And it was something I had a real knack for. I found that I had this ability to really understand how companies work, especially how to communicate with people within companies. I mean, these are very busy people. You're trying to get their attention. And I just thought, wow, I've got a knack for this. I kind of get why we're important, that we need funding. But on the other hand, I get everything that a corporate decision maker is dealing with every day and how you have to give them a little grace, right? So I started thinking to myself, wow, it would be great if I could take the success that I've had in generating advertiser sponsors for the different folks that I've worked for, but help creators as well as purpose-driven organizations connect to these kinds of people for various reasons. So it could be for corporate sponsorship, corporate funding. It could be for different types of community partnerships, or even if you're somebody that's looking for specific types of contract work, or you're talking or wanting to speak with people in marketing about what you do. How do you connect to those people? So I really saw a need for that and decided to start my own business. And knock on wood, I've been pretty successful since starting Growth Owl back in 2018. And I work with all different types of clients, usually purpose-driven based, so nonprofits, associations, startups that are very socially conscious, and also with creators, those that are looking to find funding for their content or trying to find ways to better communicate to potential funders to better understand their content. So that's a little about Growth Owl in terms of why I started it. And, it continues to evolve. So, when I started, I really focused in on purpose-driven organizations, where in the past couple of years, I've started to work with more individuals in terms of that are creators or anybody that works in the creative process that wants to connect successfully with corporations for a myriad of reasons.
And so tell me about trends. Tell me about what you see from where you sit in what it takes to reach out to a company and get a hold of them? Because you talked a little bit, you mentioned the word grace, which I
Yeah.
think is so important. I will say this, as someone who runs a small business, I am a voiceover actor, right? And when I want to reach a certain client, I will say that after about, 6, 7 tries, I want to give up. So, talk a little bit about where you sit in trying to help either individuals or nonprofits or mission driven organizations to reach out to what some people would probably say, oh, there's no way I could get a hold of them.
Yeah. So a couple things to understand that I wouldn't exactly call trends, but I think these are things that actually will be with us in perpetuity.
Yeah.
The first would be is you have to understand going into this that although this is your number one priority to get the job, sign the contract, find the funding, find the perfect sponsor, for the decision maker that you're trying to attract, that is maybe number 95,130 on their list. So you have to understand that you are not their priority. So you've got to get your ego out of your head. That's the number one thing. Just because it's important to you doesn't mean it's important to them right away. So the onus is on you to find the best way to be able to connect with them quickly to get a response that you'd like, right? So the best way that I know how to do that, first is when you're crafting a message, you have to be brief. I call it the power of brevity. So many times when I work with purpose-driven organizations or individual creators, they or you are saying way too much about yourself.
Yes, yes, yes. I've won this award. I was nominated for this. I just voiced for this.
Right.
I did this. I did that. Yes, yes.
And they're just kind of like, who the heck cares?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody can get an award now. Everybody gets a trophy in the society, right? So it's, that the whole thing is people that can connect with specific types of content and with the reason as to why I should be paying attention to you. If I'm a decision maker, why should I pay attention to you? Why should I have to respond to you? That onus is on you as the person reaching out. So the
Mm.
best way to do that is through brevity, number one. When you're utilizing emails, I like to say to try to keep them at least 250 words or less. When I'm working with various types of decision makers, whether they're executive level decision makers or creators that are just trying to get their foot in the door, they all seem to have this one thing in common, and that's they need to better position what is their why do you connect with them, with that corporation. And the best way to do that is really doing the research on your end, going deep into their website, going deep into their annual reports. What are they interested in? What are the types of people they worked with in the past? What are the types of organizations they worked with in the past? So building the bridge to why is going to be really important. So a great example would be if you're a purpose-driven organization, maybe you've noticed that the organization that you're trying to get funding from has supported other types of nonprofits that are in the food insecurity space. And you happen to be a nonprofit that also is in the food insecurity space. Okay, there's your why. So
Mm.
when you're reaching out, talk a little about who you are, but then say, I'm reaching out because I saw that XYZ Corporation has been involved with food insecurity in these organizations. We're doing very similar work, would like to have a conversation. That is much stronger than just going in and saying, we do this and we do this, and this is why we're important, and this is why you need to talk to us, right? You need to establish the why. If you don't establish the why up front, you're really, really going to lose out on somebody potentially writing back to you, because you're just going to be in the myriads of people that are trying to outreach and engage with
Yes.
decision makers. And a lot of emails do not get read. I know corporate decision makers that will just say, if I see an email come in and my whole page is just full of paragraphs, I'm not even reading it.
I wouldn't
Right.
either.
Think about it. What's funny is when I get some pushback on this sometimes, think about what our smartphones have trained us to become accustomed to.
100% start to preach, Lori
Right.
Zoss.
We want short form content,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're okay watching a 5 or maybe 15-second ad to get the free content we want. But
Right.
once we start to go past that, it's like, oh gosh, I'm not going to sit through this, right? Our phones have trained us this.
Yep.
I mean, there's even a whole, I mean, I'm sure your viewers of your podcast are very familiar with vertical movies right now. You know, there's a huge trend in these vertical movies that are basically an hour at most, and their episodes are 1 minute apiece. That's where we are as a society in wanting to consume entertainment. So, of course, we have to adapt our business writing and our business outreach that same way. So, this is where, when I'm working with creators or anybody that needs to outreach, I really spend time helping them understand the psychological reasons as to why people just are going to respond better to outreach that has brevity and that's almost written in like you're doing creative work for social media. I mean, it's very similar. So again, summarizing, you want to have the power of brevity. You want to keep it brief, 250 words or less if you're sending an email. And quickly, what is the why? Why do you, maybe as a voice artist, why should you resonate best with XYZ's audience as opposed to somebody else? Tell me why. Show me why based on the behavior that that company has already exerted. If you can do that, you're going to be golden.
So let's do that. Let's dig in, right? So let's give an example for creatives, not just voiceover actors, right? Maybe
Yeah, sure.
an artist who paints or, that kind of stuff. Like, I love this idea of going to their annual report. I think
Yes.
that's something that I think a lot of people would not think to do,
Yeah.
because you're right. I've actually created annual reports in my previous life
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
marketing and PR, and they
Yes.
do tell a very wide story, right?
Yeah.
It's not just numbers. It talks about humanitarian efforts. It talks
Yeah.
about how their product or service affects real human beings. They love to have the real person story in there. So
Yeah.
let's talk about the voice actor, the painter, the
Sure.
copywriter. How could they? Like, what would you suggest? Like, you create a list of your top 10 dream clients? Like, let's walk through exactly what it would look like.
So first is, what is the reason that you're wanting to outreach to them? Are you outreaching them because you're looking for potential work? You know, that's a very different outreach than, hey, I have an idea I'd like to pitch to you, right? So there are many different decision makers in a corporation. So part of this work is deciding who is it that you have to and you should be reaching out to. And most of the time when people are reaching out, they tend to go to one of two areas, either marketing,
Yep.
or if it's for work, usually HR. Now, for me, I try to encourage people to get a little more creative about where they go. And that includes those organizations I work with that are looking for, corporate sponsors or corporate partners. Marketing to me sometimes is the absolute worst place for you to go because of all the other people that are engaging in marketing. The competition is for attention is extremely fierce in marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So think about it. With marketing, you've got Google ads, you've got print ads, you've got broadcast ads, there's just a myriad of things. Marketing folks tend to be extremely overworked, and
Mm-hmm.
putting anybody down in marketing,
Right.
they could be a little grumpy, right? Because, but to understandably so, more and more gets thrown on them. And in terms of the appreciation level, I'm just going to be really frank. Marketing is seen as an expense on a
Yes.
profit and loss sheet.
And always
So
the first to go. Always the
that's
first to be
always the
cut.
first to go, right? So there also tends to be more churn in marketing. So just when you've got a relationship maybe going with somebody, they're gone.
Yep.
So it's into your best interest to maybe think of what are other areas in a company that might resonate. So let's think about voiceover artists. So let's say that you are watching the Masters tournament And you would think to yourself, gee, maybe I'd like to hear more female voices involved in the Masters tournament. Christy, does
Well,
that sound familiar?
Lori Zoss, as you already probably know, because I know you follow Building Doors,
Yes,
that
yes, I do.
85%,
Yes, I do.
85% of all of the ads in the Masters this past year were voiced by men. So
Yes,
yes, please continue with your example.
yes. So instead of going to the Masters, what I would do is I would go to their larger sponsors. And because it's the sponsors that really kind of help to dictate what the organization does, at least in a for profit sense, right? So let's say, okay, I'm just making this up. Let's say it's Visa. Let's say Visa is, or, Rolex. Rolex is a part of the Masters. I'm fairly certain of that. So let's say Rolex, for example. So if it were me, instead of going to the director of marketing, I would try to find and see if Rolex had like a vice president of community engagement or a vice president of public affairs. Why? Because these people are explicitly connected to the mission, vision, and value of the company.
Mm.
And because you're going and saying, look, I'm a big fan of the Masters. I happen to be a voiceover talent. Has Rolex ever considered utilizing a spot during the Masters that's voiced by a female?
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
that is going to talk more to them from a community affairs public image versus marketing might think of it in a different way. Okay.
Yes.
So looking at other people within the organization. And the other reason why I like public affairs and why I like community engagement, they tend to be a little bit closer to the CEO because a lot of times those areas of the company fall under either public affairs will fall under the CEO through another executive, or it will fall under the chief legal officer. And the chief legal officer always, for the most part, is going to report the CEO. Why is that important? Because then that person has the ear of the head of the organization. I find that with marketing, there tends to be other layers between marketing and the CEO many times. Not all times, but many times. So the whole idea is you want to get closest to the mission of the company as possible, and that's going to fall under the CEO. So the closer you can get to him, the better, or her. And then utilizing areas like community affairs, public affairs, I think are a good way for a voice artist to go. And instead of going to the Masters or going to the NBA or whomever to want to hear more female voices in sports, go to the sponsors. Because
It's so interesting the point you just made. You're about marketing people. You're so right.
yeah,
These people get 100 to 150 emails a week from
yeah,
voice actors basically saying, "Hi, I'm a voice actor and I have voiced this, this, and this, and I'd love to voice for you. Can I get on your roster?" And what is interesting, and this is something that I have been preaching for the last year and a half that I've been running Building Doors, which is lead with a mission, lead with a purpose, not
yeah.
with your talent per se, because there's so, we're a very talented group, right? There's lots of talented voice actors, right? But what separates you? And so some people immediately could say, okay, let's say they're a breast cancer survivor.
Yes.
And so they purposely go towards brands that support breast cancer. That's great, right? But what if you're not? What if you don't have that just innate or something that has defined you through circumstance?
Mhm.
What can you do, right? And so I love this idea of A, not going to the typical characters, and B, the email that you just said was so short. Hi, my name is.
Yes.
I'm a fan of the Masters. I watched it.
Yeah.
I know that you're a major sponsor. Wondering if you'd ever consider having a
Yes.
woman voice. Done. Done.
That's it.
Bye. Done.
Yeah.
And I also find that in evangelizing Building Doors, when I reach out to the person in charge of DEI or community relations or community development, it's their job to talk to people like me.
Right. Absolutely.
It's their
Yes.
job to reply to me. Whereas in
That's
marketing or producers, it isn't. They don't have to say boo-hoo could shoot to me.
Mhm.
But the community development people, the community engagement people, they're hired to listen to the general public, to listen to their fans, their consumers.
You
And
got it.
so this shift, it's not that big of a shift, right? But it's just
Yeah.
thinking in a different way. And I think it's so brilliant. And if creatives can get on top of this idea and really do it well and strategically, they can be doing something that nobody else is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. The other tip I would give too is the power of LinkedIn. I'm a big fan of LinkedIn.
Oh, big fan. Big
Big fan
fan.
of LinkedIn, and Christy, I've told you this. I see this type of work, sponsorship engagement, as a science. I love to experiment. I love to create a hypothesis, see if it works. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But even if it doesn't, I've got information to get me to the next step of what I need to do next, right? So, in a lot of the science I'm doing lately with outreach, I've been having a lot of luck with LinkedIn and outreaching people on LinkedIn. I think that for now, it's still a really good professional platform. People are utilizing it in the right way.
Hmm.
And it's kind of a not exactly a level playing field, but I think sometimes you get better access to people on LinkedIn without
Yes.
other people in between. Like if there's an assistant that looks at emails, what have you, just sending a LinkedIn. Plus, that person can go right to your LinkedIn profile and make a quick decision about you. Now,
Yes.
that being said, though, you better have a really good LinkedIn profile, right? Make sure your about section is really good and you've got an updated photo and everything. So keep that in mind. But I love LinkedIn right now for engagement, and it also forces you to have to keep your messages brief. Because if you're reaching out on LinkedIn, via either the IM mail or just to connect, you only have a certain amount of characters. So it forces you into that power of brevity. So I love it.
Yeah. Now let's talk a little bit because I saw something on TikTok, as one does these
Yes.
days,
There we go.
at
Yes.
least for now,
Yeah.
um, from someone who used to work at Goldman Sachs.
Oh, good. Okay.
And this young woman who used to work there said, listen, when I first got hired by Goldman Sachs, I went through this training and they literally broke down how to get a hold of somebody.
Oh,
And
wow.
and she said, just email the CEO. And
Mm,
I was like, "Huh? Say what?" And she's like, "The CEO either looks at his or her email themselves,
yes.
or they have an assistant who goes through. And
Yes.
likely what happens is they will forward it on to someone else in their team to take care of. So if the
Yes.
CEO sends you, the employee, this email, take care of this, or address this concern, or answer their question, that person's going to do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so their whole thing that Goldman Sachs taught them was don't waste your time emailing anybody else. Email the CEO. I also heard someone tell me, this woman told me about a year ago, she said, my last ditch effort when I can't get a hold of someone is to simply send them a calendar invite for a meeting. And likely what happens is, especially with the higher ups, they don't look at that stuff. Their assistant does. And the
Hmm.
assistant automatically assumes that, well, if somebody's sending a Google invite for a calendar, meeting, she or he must have already approved it. So I'm just going to accept it. And then all of a sudden you're on the calendar. Now, I think that's a little shady because then what happens when you get on that meeting? They don't know you. Like you could leave. It's risky, right? What do you
Yeah.
think of those two things?
All right, I'm going to go backwards. I do not like the latter. I do not like of just sending a calendar. Here's why I don't like that. And this gets kind of into the psychology of the work. People that you are engaging are very, very protective of their time.
Okay.
When you are just sending a meeting or you're just sending the calendar request, that's kind of like saying, I know I'm worth your time and it's not earning the right for the time. Do you see what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying?
I do. I totally do.
I just don't, I don't like that at all. And I've actually had people use that approach on me.
Ooh, really? Oh,
Oh, yeah.
that's juicy, Lori.
Yeah. And it goes right into my junk box. Yeah, I put you right. If you send me a calendar invite or say, oh, here's another one I get. Let's talk tomorrow at 10 a.m. You're going right into my junk. I don't like that. Yeah, I don't like that. And remember, now some people might say that's a generational thing. I am an Xer,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just
Right,
going to
right.
be real. Most decision makers now are older millennials, Xers, or boomers. So you have to tailor to that, right? And I can tell you that we're still kind of old school in how we like to be courted. And think we've talked about this before, Christy. I see this work as like dating. Just kind of, you have to court people. You have to see if are you the right for each other to want to move
Hmm.
forward, right? So anyways, that courting process, it's like you're already sending me on a second date when I haven't had a first date with you, when you're sending me a calendar invite.
Oh, God. You didn't even buy me a coffee or nothing.
That's right. But no, I don't like that. It sounds very transactional sales, like you're going to sell me some software. I don't like that.
Yeah.
All right. Going directly to the CEO. I'm not opposed to that. I've done it. But I think it just depends on, I think size of company would be one thing. The bigger the company, the more walls that are around the CEO. But try it. I don't see harm in trying it. Now, where I do agree with you is that, you will become a priority. If the CEO says, here, talk to this person, oh, yeah, you've become a priority. But
Yeah.
that's also true when you are engaging some like a senior vice president or another C-suite person. And although that's not exactly what they manage, what you're asking for, you become a soft referral internally for them. So,
Mm.
if I'm the chief financial officer and you happen to come to me about voiceover work, and I send it then down to my senior vice president of community engagement, because the CFO sent it, it's like you're like a warm lead.
Yeah.
It's the same philosophy, but it doesn't just work on the CEO. So I would be more apt to try more on the CEO level, but I'm still a fan of at least being at like a senior vice president or higher. I think you're still in good shape to if you engage that level.
What are the biggest mistakes that you see your clients when they come to you and hire you for this service? What are some of the biggest mistakes you see when you're having those conversations? Like, okay, well, what have you done so far? What are some of the biggest mistakes you see?
Couple things. So I mentioned this earlier, the length of your outreach, way too long. I like to do email audits. Let me see what you've sent. People get really, really like, oh no. It's funny because they're like, oh, my emails are great. Well, let me see them. Oh no. So we get real. We take a look at these emails. And again, and I just want to say, and I work with multi-million-dollar nonprofits and associations, and they have some of the same problems that a 1 or 2 person shop would have. 400, 500 word emails. No one's going to read this. But something about us psychologically, we feel more accomplished when we dump all that in there. And the thing is, it's not getting read because you're not making connection. That would be the second thing. You're not making connection in the email right away. You're spending too much talking about the what of what you do, but you're not talking about the why you need to connect to them. That's another thing. And a third thing I would say, which we haven't talked about, is when are you sending these messages?
Yeah, let's talk about that with the when.
Yeah, let's talk about sending. Now, there's tons of articles out there of when you should send emails. So I'm just going to give you my perspective, what works for me. I find most high level decision makers are early birds. They wake up earlier in the day. And what I like to do is have emails sent before 8:30 in the morning. The reason this is a sweet spot is because you might be able to catch them before they get into the office, like they're looking at their phone. They're actually more in a receptive mode to look at something new versus once they get into the office and it's like, there's just everything's coming at them. So I will, and it doesn't, and if you've got viewers out there thinking, oh gosh, I'm not a morning person, it doesn't matter. In your
Schedule
Gmail,
it.
in your
Yeah.
Outlook, you can schedule emails. And
Yep.
the reason I mentioned this, Christy, is a lot of people don't seem to realize that. So I've learned to assume nothing about what people know about email. So yes, you can schedule the email to go out early. I've played around with I don't do anything earlier than 7. I've played around with 7:15, 7:30. I've even had some people respond to me in real time from when they got it. Yes, so I would try something early. I tend to stay away from Mondays and Fridays. Mondays because it's the first day back in the office. There's always something going on. Fridays only because there's a lot of people out of the office. So it's very easy that your email can get the out of office reply and then it doesn't get responded the next week. It gets lost. However, there is an argument for Friday to maybe at least try a little outreach, because that is the time that the gatekeepers of decision makers also take the days off. And instead of the email going to the assistant and maybe getting lost there, you do get directly to the right person.
Look at you, Lori Zoss, with all the juiciness. Yes.
So here's the background. So I experiment with Fridays, but I would really, really emphasize that mornings tend to be better. Wow. Definitely with decision makers. They tend to be early birds. And especially, I like to say money likes to wake up early. If you're dealing with anybody in finance, accounting, oh yeah, these are morning people. They're usually the first people in. And they, by early afternoon, they really have no interest in reading anything because they've read so much. So those are my tips in terms of outreach for email is really those times a day. And the other thing too, do not send attachments on your first email. That's another big one. So let me tell you why.
Yes, do so.
Yes. So first of all, with larger corporations and even some medium-sized ones now too, firewalls are huge for security. So if you're an email address that the firewall has never seen before, your email is not going to get to the decision maker anywhere in that company if there's an attachment.
What about links?
Links are okay. Yeah. So based on the experimentation, links are okay, but I would really recommend you use something like a bit.ly or a shortly to keep links short. So if you're not familiar with those, it's kind of like if you want to show something in your portfolio and your link is so long, that kind of looks spammy. So what you can do is for free, just type into Google free URL shortener. And then you can pop it in there and it's a much shortened URL. We find that decision makers are more apt to click on a link if it's shortened.
What about a hyperlink?
Long. Yeah, so the same thing. Just try to keep it short if you can, and keep it towards the end of the email. Don't lead with that. You again, we want to massage them to get them to wanting to get interested in you. So we want that link to appear at the end because we want to be respectful of their time and help them see that you are respectful of giving them the narrative to get them to where they need, so they want to click on that link.
Let's talk about, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Okay. No, go ahead. I'll take some water.
I'd like to talk about perseverance.
Oh, yeah.
Because you've given some great advice on the research. Mm-hmm. You've given some great advice on how long an email needs to be, when to send it, what to say, who to send it to. But after we send it, then what? What is the system? What is the perseverance that we need to have? Because many of us in creative arts, and I think just in general, people know that it takes between 7 to 10, sometimes even more touches. Touches can mean a lot of things, not just emails, right? It can mean commenting on social media. It can be sending a LinkedIn. There's lots of things that mean touches. So I'd love to hear from you. Okay, we've sent the email. We've done all the right stuff. Now what? And then maybe any stories you have about the importance of perseverance, the importance of waiting.
Yeah. So you have to have stamina.
Yeah.
Yeah. I call it this basically corporate stamina when I'm talking about it. Going back to what I said earlier, you have to understand that this is not their priority. So to help, and you might be thinking, well, how do I become their priority? Well, the thing is, you're not. But you can get yourself closer that you're of interest, right? So the best way to do that is consistency. So what I like to do is when I'm working with clients, I recommend that they reach out like every 10 business days if they don't get a reply. And then after doing that for maybe 2 months, to take a 60-day break and try somebody else. That would be some very general advice.
Sure.
So that's one way to go. Also, you have to remember that I think that the number right now, the average decision maker is getting anywhere from 250 to 300 emails a day. So you have to keep that in mind too, right?
A day.
A day. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. A
In
day.
larger corporations, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. So, you have to, you're up against a lot, right? So
Yeah.
the thing that I hear the most is, from decision makers, oh my gosh, I apologize. I'm just seeing this now. Even though I've
Mm.
emailed like 5 or 6 times and I'm just seeing this now. So the question is, what was it this time? It's going to vary. I'll start playing around with different, experiment different days, try some different subject lines. You just have to keep experimenting, right? So that the best thing and the best way to experiment is there anything that you can learn about the company going on with them in the news right now that maybe even the CEO is talking about that would help create some immediacy? So let me give you an example. Beginning of this year, Amazon got really big on wanting to talk about rural broadband. Like rural broadband in rural communities is really important to Amazon because they know further out people want to get things delivered. So that means more people would want to buy from Amazon. So, it's a trickle down effect. If more people have rural broadband, Amazon can make more money. You know this, right? So the CEO started talking about in the beginning of the year all about rural broadband and how important it is. And when the CEO was talking about something like that so much, that's it's going to be important to the company,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So if I were watching that, and again, let's use the voiceover talent example. Most likely, I can surmise that there are departments within the organization, within Amazon, that are putting together external communications about why rural broadband is important. So instead of just outreaching and saying, hey, have you ever considered a female voice artist for Amazon? You change the subject line to talk about rural broadband and female voice artist. Aha, now wait a minute. This is interesting. This is something the CEO is talking about. And how the heck does it connect? It's almost like I got to click on this email.
Mm.
Right? So in it, I might say something like, I've been following your CEO who's been talking about the interest in rural broadband. And again, I'm just making this up. Maybe you're a
Right.
female voice artist that lives in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming. I don't know, right? But you are there and you understand why rural broadband is important. So you've got that going for you. And you've been listening to the Amazon CEO. You've got that going for you. That's all you need to say. Can we talk more?
Mm.
How about utilizing a female voice of somebody in a rural area for your external communications on rural broadband? Oh, now that is compelling.
Yes.
So that's a long way for me to say when I'm experimenting, I try to get more specific as I can. And quite honestly, the onus is on you to figure out what the connection is. So you might be thinking, well, gosh, Lori, there are millions of companies out there. How do I even think about? Well, start with where you're interested in. So if we go back to the masters per se, if we're really interested, like I know you, Christy, interested in getting more females involved in sports in terms of voiceover. So I would pick an event. So we're going to pick the masters and I'm going to pick their top 3 sponsors. So we know it's Rolex, maybe Visa is one of them. And I feel like there's a high-end water that's involved with them too. Okay. We'll just say Evian. I know it's not that, but
Sure.
that's how I would start. You want to start small, but extremely qualified. Because anytime, you know how it is when you want to get an initiative in your head and you want to do everything. I'm going to be so successful. I'm going to go through this entire list. No, you're not. Right?
No, you're not.
Life gets good, right? So, and this is how I work with large organizations too. Instead of a list of like 50, what we would call prospects, we start with 10
Mm-hmm.
and really get to know them. It's quality of the outreach over the quantity. Like
Mm,
our brains are so programmed by quantity of things. We have to kind of retrain the brain to be like, okay, we want the quality, not the quantity. I think it goes back to school. Like we have all these tasks in school, and then we feel really good as we check them off that we've done it. So the more tasks we check off, the better it feels. The
mm.
problem is sometimes we can complete a task, but it was crap. But our brain still gets that dopamine that was done, right? So, you
So
know,
how long do you wait?
ah,
How long do you stay with an Evian, right? So you've set this goal of these 3 brands, right? So
yeah,
how long do you stay before you're like, yeah, it's not gonna be a go?
I would say engage for like 2 months using go every 10 days for 2 months, and then give it a break for 60 days and then think about re-engaging. Or you could just be like, you know what, just not going to go there anymore. Let me look for somebody else.
Mm,
But look, the process is more about how do you pick where you want to go. And if you don't have something in mind, well, what project in mind really resonates for you that could resonate for a corporation? And I mean, there are so many endless possibilities. It's kind of hard to walk through an example, but that try and just, I think the best way is kind of what we've done here is just kind of utilizing your experience, Christy, and wanting to get more female voices in sports. That's something that's nice and specific. But instead of going after, I'm going to talk to the NFL, I'm going to talk to the NBA, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, start by picking one and then going even deeper.
mm,
So in this case, I took golf,
mhm,
go deeper. I took the Masters, I go deeper. I go to the sponsor, I go deeper. Let's just pick their top 3 sponsors.
mhm.
And how do you find out their top 3 sponsors? Well, they're all over their website.
Yeah, yeah. All you have to do is watch it. Like, that you'll see the same
Right.
commercials over and over and over again. So,
Absolutely.
you have dropped some serious, serious knowledge, and I only have a few more questions for
Yeah.
you, but one that I wanna make sure is loud and clear right now.
Mhm.
Let's say I am a voice actor, I am in the creative field, maybe I'm a copywriter, maybe I'm whoever, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, "I really like what Lori Zoss is putting down. I wish I could work with her."
Yes.
Do you work with people like myself? And what does that look like? And how can people, after listening to this, say, I wouldn't mind like speaking to Lori a little bit and seeing exactly what her goings-ons are?
Yeah. So I love doing work with creators. I'll just call it creators and creatives. I really started to get into this because I had my own creative projects to start to promote. As you mentioned earlier, I wrote a business book a couple of years ago, the Boardroom Playbook. And then that got my interest again in more creative writing. So, wrote under caution, and that got me access again to all different types of creatives, from editors to graphic designers. And it reminded me how much I kind of missed being around that world, those folks. So then it turned into opportunities to really help them with their voice and their narrative, right? So the work with creatives is really about, first of all, helping to create a narrative as to the importance and the uniqueness of what you do so it can connect with the right decision maker. That's the bulk of it. That is really important because if you've got the right why, it's going to be easier to adapt, right? To
And it
different.
won't feel as icky.
That's right. Yeah, it won't feel as icky. So it's not like you're trying to sell your services. You're trying to add value with your voice. If you're a voice
Yes,
artist,
yes.
it's all about adding value to an existing brand. Because let's be honest, IBM, Rolex, Amazon, they don't need us,
Mm,
but we can add value.
mm,
There's always ways to add value, right? It's not need. It's kind of like you're a cherry on top of a
mm.
sundae they already have. And companies, if there's one thing that they all have in common, is they're all looking to connect to new types of markets, right? They always want to increase service sales or increase product sales, right? How do you do that? You have to have more eyeballs thinking of you. So you can see yourself also as an influencer through your creativity. So that's how you have to kind of see yourself. You don't have to be representative of everybody, but if there's a certain niche that you represent, that's great, and that could really resonate with companies. So that's the work that we do. And then once we figured out your why, once we create a narrative that you're comfortable with and that quite frankly I'm comfortable with for you taking out there, then we create the outreach strategy. I think there's still too much of this, well, I'm just going to start it and then, figure it out later.
Mm.
Some of that is still resonant in the entrepreneurial world when you're starting any type of new business, but there are a few things you have to have in check that you need. And that is what is it that makes you unique, and what is the value you provide
Mm-hmm.
that would be of interest to a larger sponsor / decision maker.
Right. Client. Yeah.
Yeah. So we start with the work on your narrative, and then we talk about who is it you need to go to. And then we create a strategy as to how to do that. And that strategy can either be me training you on how to do it your own, which quite frankly is most of the time. The other strategy is myself or somebody else within Growth Owl that would actually outreach on your behalf.
Yeah, I would like to point out to people who are watching / listening that Lori really opened my mind to a lot of new ways to evangelize Building Doors and create partnerships that I otherwise wouldn't have thought of. And I highly, highly recommend Lori, even if it was just for a consultation call. And do you have, and so you just described that process. Is that some sort of program? Is that some sort of package? Like what would you call that? Like, what is that?
Yeah. So with most, I guess you could call it a program.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that we would spend about usually 3 months together.
Okay.
And then, so it's not like I'm an advisor who comes in that I'm going to continue working with you in, forever, perpetuity, right? No, if I do my job right, I give you the tools you need and you go.
Exactly.
You can kind of like you guys, kind of like what voiceover artists do and other creatives. You provide what you need to provide, and then you go to your next project. But I also have clients that I build in mentorship with. So if you want to, jump on a call a couple times a month for a few months after we work together, that's fine. But I do try to customize based on what you're doing. So, when you go to my website, you're not going to see, well, this is the creatives package. I don't do.
Yeah.
I start with a complimentary call, just like you said. It's usually about 30 minutes. We just talk. And I'll be very honest if I feel as though I could help you. If I can't help you, I'll at least try to resource you with where else you could go. But I would say 9 times out of 10, those complimentary sessions do turn into some sort of next step.
And I will say also for those that are listening, Miss Lori Zoss is a connected woman. She has connections and a network that is vast, and she's a great person to even bounce things off of. So with that, I have 2 more questions. One, you need to break it down all about your books. Let's talk about the books, because if I were to go buy your book, The Boardroom Playbook, is that only for nonprofit? Like, is it only for nonprofits and associations, or can someone like me who's in the creative field learn something from it?
Yeah, I talk about how it's really for purpose-driven organizations, but think about it. You are an organization, right? You are working on your behalf as a business. So the tips and the tools that I share in that book actually are very applicable. And I write it in a way that I use a lot of examples. And I change the names, of course. I use a lot of examples, though. But I start the book talking about how, well, Christy, you'll appreciate this because this was going on when I was at our alma mater, Baldwin Wallace. The preface of the book is how I knew I was going to get into this kind of work at an early age. When I was working for a sports organization while I was in college. So I'll just
yeah.
And then I walk you through the entire process. Okay, this is how to do research. Here are the tips on when to outreach. Some of the base level things I talked about today, but more specifically.
Sure.
And I walk you through the entire process, through meeting, through proposal, to kind of managing that relationship. and then kind of where to go after that. So although it is, it talks about purpose-driven organizations, that's kind of what you are. You are an organization. And whether you're an organization of multiple people or an organization of one, successful outreach looks the same. So,
and we will put the link to purchase your book in the podcast description. And as well as your other book. Tell us about your other book, because I know it's like a fun passion project for you, but I think it's important to show that you're a woman who saw a need, started her own business, right?
Yeah.
You deal predominantly on the decision-making end with men. And now you decided to do something in addition to, which a lot of people, a lot of women especially, are trying to do. They're trying to create multiple streams of income through their passions. And so you're a great example of that. And so I want to kind of just have you give a brief description of the book and why. Like, why did you decide to do it?
Well, I just happen to have a copy right here.
Yes, do it, girl. Show it. Yes.
This is Under Caution.
Under Caution.
This is my book, and Christy knows it very well, because let's just be honest, she's one of the best in voiceover, and I had her voiceover trailer. So
I did that was my first book trailer. That was my first book trailer, and it's awesome. And talk about the main character.
Yes. All right. So let me kind of walk you to why I got into this. So I'm an avid reader. I love to read, but I also have a short attention span.
Yeah.
It's hard to kind of, I like Stephen King, but he can be kind of long, and there's a lot of great, and I like Colleen Hoover and all these great books, but sometimes I just feel like it takes a long time to get into it. So I thought to myself, I've start and stopped so many creative projects with writing over the years. And I know a lot of people can appreciate that.
Yes,
I don't know.
Yes.
Probably like at least a dozen starts and stops of fiction that I've done since I was in my 20s. I just never finished. So I came upon close to a, milestone birthday for myself this year. And it was, a little over a year ago, I was thinking about that. And I said, I'm going to write this. I'm going to write something. And I wanted to write something that I would call fast fiction. I want to get you in fast, keep you captivated, keep you page turning, and get you out quick and leave you wanting more.
Okay.
So Under Caution it's definitely, although I've had men really enjoy the book too. It was written for busy females to get in and out of a story. And the story is about a female race car driver, specifically stock car driver. And she's one of the best in racing. And the reason I chose racing, it's because it's one of the very few sports where men and women can compete on the same playing field, on the same track. That was really important to me. So my character is Daisy Cray, and Daisy has quite the on and off romance with one of her biggest rivals, Jackson Wyatt. So that's interesting to have a relationship with someone you're competing against. So there's some great stuff there. But the suspense part of the book comes from the roots of AI. There is a villain that is after her and knows a lot about technology and knows a lot about AI that puts her life in danger as well as those around her.
Danger.
So, yes. Yeah. If you're looking for a good suspense romance that's 60,000 words, which in fiction is short. Mm-hmm. I like to say that if you're taking a flight from New York to LA, you could read the whole thing and you'd be, you leave wanting more. It's perfect for you. And I'm actually in the process of outlining the second book in what I'm calling the Daisy series. So,
ooh, juicy.
It does end with quite the cliffhanger. So lots of action. I had somebody, I think the best description I've heard somebody say, I got a really good review about it's a cross between the Fast and Furious and a Colleen Hoover book.
Oh, that's very, yeah.
Good. So I'll take it.
It's enticing. Yeah, that's a really great review.
Yes.
So we will also put a link in the podcast description to your fiction book, right?
Yeah, thank you.
And then the last question that I have for you is, well, first, let me back up. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You have been amazing. And I love it when podcast guests come on and they actually share useful knowledge.
Oh,
It's
good.
not just performative. It's something that
Right.
people could
Right.
listen to this while they're walking the dog and they'll
Yeah.
go home and take notes, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
easily implement a lot of a lot of these strategies that you've outlined for us. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. They're little
Uh,
things. Just
right?
little. Mhm.
Yeah, but little bits, but anybody, if they don't have the money to hire someone like you
Yeah.
or you, if they
Yeah.
don't have, right, these are things that you could easily put into practice, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
So thank you so much for that.
Well,
So my last question is this. I have this series called Door to Success, where
yes.
uh, I collect this answer. What does your door to success look like? I collect
Mhm.
those answers from women and young girls around the world. And I am trying to find a sponsor to help so I can pay the voice actor, the artist, because I partner with artists and then they listen to the story of what this woman's door to success looks like. And then they use their medium, whatever that is, whether it be paint, clay, animation, stop motion, and they create the story visually. So I ask everybody on the podcast, what does your door to success look like?
Wow. So the first thing I picture, I love tree lined driveways. So I picture just a huge, and I'm picturing like it's autumn time. These just beautiful colors of just maples and oak trees just lining the driveway to my door. That's the first thing I see.
They are
Just
gorgeous.
they,
When you go down a long driveway and it's filled with, especially
yeah,
at fall, gorgeous. Okay, keep
yeah,
going.
yeah. So the golds and the oranges and the
Mhm.
reds just lining you up to the door. So when I get to the door, it's definitely like a dark purple. I love that color. I find it to be a very healing color. It's a color I like to wear. It looks like a traditional door. It looks to be on like maybe a really, really big old English type looking home. Like just something you'd see out of, Bridgerton or Downton Abbey or something like that. Just a big door. Now, when you open the door, when I think of success, there are two words that come to me, and it's peace and freedom.
Oh,
And whatever I do, everything that I do in my life right now is about peace and freedom.
mm,
And when I open that door, some of the things I see, as I said, I love to read and I love to write. I've always just pictured one of those really large, huge English libraries just full of books.
the
Just
kind you need a ladder for?
yes, like something you'd see out of Harry Potter, just books. I that completely turns me on. That just being in just a huge area of just books, old books, new books, books that smell old, books that smell new. I still like physical books, right? And then just a big desk where I can write and be creative and create worlds.
Mm,
Um, I see that. I also see on the other side, maybe just like a blue sky and sunshine with water fountains and just animals just kind of roaming around. I love animals. I love wildlife. And I just get a lot of peace and serenity from seeing wildlife.
mm.
So I see that as well. And yeah, I think those are the things that are behind my door. And, people can come, people cannot come because it's really all about me and my peace and freedom.
I would love to come to your door. I would love to knock on your door and come visit because that is such I mean, honestly, I'm not an avid reader, but I do love a good book wall. I love the smell. It reminds me of going to the
Yes,
library as a kid.
yes,
And do you
yes,
remember when it had the cards and the lady would
yes,
stamp? Yes.
yes, yes. Christy, there is a bookstore in Columbus called the Book Loft. So if anyone's in Columbus, Ohio, Germantown, they have these book bags that look like the old library cards that you would see.
Oh. And do you remember too when you went to the library? This is showing our age, but I don't care. When you
So,
went to the library, if you were looking for a book, you first had to go to the index.
oh, yes.
Remember, you had to pull out by alphabetical order,
Give me
sort
that
through.
small system.
Yes, and then you'd have to find the number, and then you'd have to go. Oh my gosh. There's something so nostalgic for me
Oh,
about
completely.
going to the library as a kid
Oh,
and
we
checking
could
out
have a
books.
whole session on libraries. Oh,
I
I love
know,
it.
right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
how it's a lost art at this point,
Oh,
like, I don't think kids understand how amazing some of those smells were.
mm,
It could instantly take you back. Like, don't get me started about a scratch and sniff Snicker, girl.
oh, I love that.
Do you remember the
That's
scratch and and if you got a book from the library that just happened some kid put a scratch and sniff sticker on, oh,
yeah, yeah.
that was a good day. It was a good day.
Remember the
Ah!
remember the textbooks in school where you would sign your name that you had the book?
Yes.
Yeah. So you'd
Yes.
see previous years who had the book. I'm like, I wonder who that is. Like
Yeah. Or
you have
if it
to
was like the
nostalgia.
cool if it was the cool kid, you're like, "Oh my god, I have Brian's book. Oh
Yes.
my gosh."
Oh my god.
So if you like what you heard today, and if you
Yes.
like what you've heard on other episodes, show us some love. You can go to buymeacoffee.com/buildingdoorsvo, and you can become a supporter. You can give a one-time donation or sign up to be a monthly sponsor. We greatly appreciate any donation as it does help defray the cost of podcast production. Thank you so much, Lori Zoss, for joining us today.
Well,
And here's to building some more doors with you. Till next time. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Building Doors podcast. Want to hear more? Check out all our episodes at buildingdoorsvo.com/podcast and follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Building Doors VO. We'd love to hear from you. So call us on our 24/7 hotline at 216-307-1917 and leave us a voicemail with your thoughts. Do you want to support the podcast? Well, we love coffee. Buy us a cup through the link in the description or at buildingdoorsvo.com. Until next time, keep pushing forward, keep speaking up, and let's keep building doors together.